There's a threat that we have talked about on this show. The concerns that I have and many people that I talk to about what is happening with China. And there is always news that's out there about China that we are constantly hearing about. And whether it's the stealing of intellectual property or whether it's the keystrokes as you're going on your Zoom camera talking to individuals. I mean, there are so many things that are happening right now. But certainly we want to know more about what is going on with China and what we are doing, the United States government, and what are we doing about some of the things that maybe we're not hearing enough about when it comes to China. Brigadier General Robert Spalding is joining us right now on Daybreak, 92.5 Fox News, as we're going to get ready to have this very conversation right now. He has a book out called Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. He's a senior fellow with the Hudson Institute, and he's focusing on U.S. China relations. And I don't know of anyone better to speak to than the general right now. It's Drew Steele. How are you this morning, sir?
Great. How are you? Good morning.
It's good to see you. I'll tell you that, we have been here on this program talking about this and have been concerned about what is happening with China. And, I wonder when it comes to how we got to this place. Maybe you can speak to that right out of the gate. How did we get to this place where we see what's happening with China? We have understood for years, right? I mean, you probably know this better than anybody, that we have had these questions about China, but yet here we are. We've had decades of opportunity, I guess you could say, to kind of make a shift to address all of this. Why are we in this position? Why haven't we done anything sooner?
Well, it's not just because we're stupid. Actually, the Chinese are pretty skilled at what they do, which is creating a facade of actually wanting to join the liberal rules-based order. Of course, our politicians were sucked in by their guile. But at the same time, they believed if they just made China wealthy, that the Chinese Communist Party would somehow allow the people to be free. And of course, that was never going to happen. Meanwhile, on the donor side, the political donor side, both corporate America and Wall Street were making billions of dollars, with this relationship with China, and they didn't want it to end. So it's a gravy chain. It's this false belief in the Chinese Communist Party somehow, believing that they want to let the Chinese people be free, and we just let it go on too long. That's the bottom line. It was so hidden from view that I think there wasn't enough, outcry by the American people to say, hey, we need this to stop.
Yeah. And, I guess we see it on a smaller scale right now playing out in Hong Kong. I have a buddy who's been working in Hong Kong for the better part of 20 plus years. He's in the financial district there. He's from London. And he has watched all of this creep up little by little. The protests that he looked at early on, his thinking was, look, nothing's going to change. There's an agreement with Hong Kong. Everything's going to be fine. These are just college students who are frustrated. There's nothing to see here. Move along. Don't worry. We're fine. Everything's great. And now I talked to him recently, and he's like, I'm not really sure what's happening. I know I hear you laughing because it was almost like inevitable. I mean, there are some people we look up. Maybe it's armchair quarterbacking, but from the outside looking in, saying, that handover when that was taking place and then the agreement with China, if we know about China the way you do and everything that they have perpetrated and are willing to do, what would make us believe that they would leave Hong Kong alone?
Well, the thing that really told me what was going to happen in Hong Kong definitively very soon was the initial agreement that Liu He, the financial guy for China, for Xi Jinping, and Ambassador Lighthizer agreed to. When he took that document back to Beijing last year, and the Chinese turned around and they tore up the 50 pages of the 150-page document, that told me that China was ready to go it alone. And that meant that, Hong Kong was basically at risk. And so I saw this coming last year when they basically said, we're not going to do a deal. So this is not surprising. And in fact, in December, they said this is exactly what they're going to do. And so they're being very transparent. We're just choosing, unfortunately, to look the other way because, again, people like your friend have made a lot of money on, betting on China kind of being, continuing to play along. When Trump said, "Hey, you got to make a deal and change, or else," they said, "Screw you, we're not making a deal."
Right. Yeah. And, it's thank God we have an administration at least that is stepping up and recognizes some of what people knew before and really what we could expect moving forward. But there are some things, and even in your book, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept, I would assume as well that some of the elite might be in our universities. We hear about these Confucius Institutes, and maybe you can speak to that as well, and how, while everybody, as you put, the elite slept and others, trusting the elite were going to take care of situations like this. Can you speak to what's happening with these Confucius Institutes?
Well, we're finally starting to wake up that they're there to indoctrinate the student body. The Confucius Institutes are actually supported financially and otherwise by Hanban, which is part of the United Front Work Group, which is the propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, if we did even a cursory investigation, we would have known this. But you have the academics that are on the universities that are getting a lot of money for hosting these Confucius Institutes, saying there's nothing to see here. They're just teaching Chinese and they're just teaching Chinese culture. No, they're teaching Chinese Communist Party propaganda. It just so happens that a lot of the views held by the university actually comports with what the Chinese Communist Party wants, which is, an abrogation of freedoms.
Yeah. Yeah, I by the way, we're speaking with Brigadier General Robert Spalding, U.S. Air Force retired, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, an expert on U.S. China relations, the economy, as we talk about his book, a book I would encourage you to get, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. And, the discussion that we're having about all of these instances of whether it's Confucius Institutes or whether it is the economy. I also think about when we do look at the economy, and I was just having this conversation in the newsroom. I'm always fascinated by people saying, well, we can't leave China because America loves their cheap products. The suggestion that, number one, that you would be willing to continue to buy from a country that certainly is benefiting off of our technology, that we continue to do all of these things technologically speaking, and then we just have them take it from others and then sell it back to us, which just seems, it's incredible that we do that willingly under the guise of, well, General, listen, you like your cheap stuff, where else are you going to go? As if there's no other country on the planet where we could go, where we could set up new supply chains. And then even that cost. I have yet to hear somebody even specifically say to me, well, this is the amount of money that it would cost if we were to change that supply chain and move away from China and go to Vietnam or India or any place else. We don't even have that tangible. What if it was cents on the dollar? What if it was something that would be negligible to most Americans? And I even see in polls where people would be willing to pay more, but we don't even know what that number is. Can you speak to how difficult that even would be to get away, pull away? Is this just about the government, whether or not people are waiting to see if Joe Biden's going to come in, an administration that would be very friendly to China, that would kind of change everything that we have been talking about now and kind of take it back to where it's been and then some? I mean, is there any way that we could actually make that kind of fundamental move?
Absolutely. So, the challenge we have here is that there is a monetary, there's an industrial, and there's a trade policy of China that is aided and abetted by our lack of industrial policy, our monetary policy, and our trade policy. And it's like a drain that comes out. So could we keep doing this? We could keep doing it, and we would be essentially, we're going broke. So what the Chinese did was study what we did to the Soviet Union. And then rather than, us bankrupting them, they're intent on bankrupting us. Now, how do you change that? Easily. You just stop doing it. You stop allowing our retirement funds to go to China. Because that's what's happening. So they have a monetary policy that allows money to go over and it can't come back. So it's like a drain on the U.S. economy. At the same time, they take research, innovation, technology, talent. They take it all over to China. They create global champions like Huawei, which is one of them that's been a lot in the news.
Right.
And then they turn around and dominate global markets. Our companies can't compete because they're not competing as companies with China. They're competing with the entire country. It's a mercantilist policy that's designed to drain the coffers of democracies. You know, when I was in the White House, to get people to understand what I was talking about, I said, go look up, research photos from Dresden, Germany, after the 8th Air Force got done bombing them in World War II, bombed out neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Now, go look at pictures, overhead pictures of Detroit, and you tell me if there's any difference. And the answer is there's not, because what China's been doing to America over the last 2.5 decades is really equivalent to the 8th Air Force bombing campaign in Germany in World War II. We destroyed their industrial capacity. It was designed to destroy America's industrial capacity, and it's been very, very effective. So, yes, you get cheap goods, but you know what? You're probably getting unemployment, or you're renting out a room to Airbnb, or you're driving an Uber. That's the kind of life we've traded this cheap goods stuff for.
So, General, is there one thing that when we walk away today, the stealth war, by the way, how China took over while America's elite slept, if you want to read more about these stories and dig in deep on this book by Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who's joining us on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute and focusing on U.S. China relations. Is there one thing that we could walk away from in this conversation and say, this is what you should be looking for next? This is maybe even the start of the one thing that could make a serious dent, a fundamental change to what has been this relationship so far, and to get it back to where it needs to be, and quite frankly, in our favor.
So the Secretary Pompeo just said Hong Kong's no longer sufficiently autonomous. Hong Kong is the financial capital of China. And it's been that way because we've given them special privileges to access our capital markets. It's up to the president now. If he continues this, we're gonna have this tapeworm that I've been talking about. If he says no, because of what Secretary Pompeo said, essentially Hong Kong is under the complete control of the Chinese Communist Party. No longer do you get special privileges on Wall Street. The whole thing starts to come apart for the Chinese Communist Party. So it's really based on what the president does next. And so, I think that's what I would be looking for.
Yeah. And is it fair to say, when I say make no mistake about it, China's holding on right now to the end of the year to see who will be the president of the United States? Because if they do have a choice, Biden's their guy. I mean, the policies, is that fair to say? Kind of risky, maybe not. You kind of worry about that kind of thing. But anyway, it's really about making sure that ultimately we are doing the right thing by this country, that we take steps that the president is taking, hopefully that moving forward, that we would be able to see the right policies in place to understand what the threat is. This is a great book, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. Brigadier General Robert Spalding is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, and he's focusing on U.S. China relations, and he's joining us on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. Sir, I appreciate a few minutes of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Drew Steele.